Welcome to another episode of The Profitable Creative, the only place on the interwebs where you will learn how to turn your passion into profit. I am your host, Christian Brim. Special shout out to our one listener in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. Never heard of it. Sounds cool, though. It's got cannons in it. Joining me today, Amy Barrickman, author of the Living Room Design Formula. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Did I say the title of the book correct?
You sure did. The
Okay,
Living
yes.
Room Design Formula.
I love it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Amy.
All right. Oh gosh. Well, where do we begin? It was a cold, rainy day
Yes,
in 1982. No, I'm just kidding.
I prefer the line from The Jerk where Steve Martin says, "I was born a poor black child," but that's not politically correct now. So go ahead.
That is a great movie, though.
Yes.
Not all of it aged well, but it's a good one.
No.
Let's see. I'm an interior designer. I started my business about 15 years ago. And in doing that, I started to realize pretty early on that there is a big gap in the interior design market. There are people who hire interior designers like me, and then there are people who want to do it themselves. But then
Yes.
there's this huge in between where people want to have that look of a professionally designed room, but they don't want to hire a designer. Sometimes it's because of money, but not always. There are a lot of reasons why they wouldn't. So I realized that kind of early on and wanted to put together ideas about what if there was a blueprint, a formula someone could follow to get that professionally designed look, but not have to hire someone and work with them on a regular basis if they could still kind of do it themselves. So that's how I came up with the book, The Living Room Design Formula.
Okay. I have lots of thoughts.
Oh,
So,
good. Share them all.
well, I have a question first. So, did you create this book as a marketing tool for your interior design business?
I actually did not.
Okay.
That is a common practice, as you know,
Yes.
for profitable creatives and a great one. I found myself in kind of the opposite situation. I had a still have a very successful interior design business, but I also started branching out on social media. My sister challenged me to post one thing every day, and something went viral, and then all of a sudden I have this following, but I really had nothing to offer them because they're all over the world, and I'm just here outside of Philadelphia. So there was
So, do
no way
you
for
know
me
where
to reach those
Cannonsburg is?
people. I actually, embarrassingly, I don't.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
I feel that I should know that.
Okay.
My
Sorry.
guess is it's near Gettysburg, right?
There are a
Which
lot
is
of
a
bergs in
beautiful part of the
Pennsylvania.
state.
Lots of bergs.
Beautiful. But hi, someone in Cannonsburg. I would like to come visit you, and I will look where it is on Google Maps.
Okay, so stipulating that you did not write this book to drive business to your current business, and an aside, I it's funny. I started to write the book, the Profit First for Creatives, with the intent to gain um, authority in the space, but as I wrote it, I realized that I didn't want it to be one of those business card books. And I've had people, reach out to me and like, I didn't even realize, even after reading the book, that you owned an accounting business. And I'm like, good, that was the intent. So what immediately came to mind was a book called Save the Cat. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not.
Okay, so I haven't read Save the Cat. I read a derivative book called Save the Cat for Novelists, but it was written by a screenwriter about essentially how to write a script that sells. And he didn't call it a formula. They kind of strayed away from calling it formulaic, but he said these elements are common. Like every great script has these elements. And so formula gives you this impression that it's like an equation. Like if I put A and B together, I'm going to get C. So how would you respond to that about your book?
Well, that is really partially the goal. I had a lot of people that were coming to me and wanted my help, and I simply couldn't service them. I simply
Hmm.
didn't have the ability. So I thought if I just gave people a path that they could
Hmm.
follow, they could get a great result. And in design, there are no right answers, just like in writing a screenplay, of course. But what I hope to do is really help people focus. So there were points when I was writing this book that I thought, okay, if I'm working on a professional design, I might take it this direction or this direction, but I had to choose one. I had to choose one that makes sense for most people. And I think that that worked because I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, this really changed the way I feel about my house. It changed the way I feel about what I do because a lot of times people are just living in spaces that are 85% finished. This gives them the ability to take it to not quite 100% because design is never really complete, but get them pretty close.
That just reminded me. Our head of client service, her husband has been living in Nebraska, doing his nurse anesthetist school for 3 years, and she's been commuting up to see him, and he's been coming back to see her. They have a young child. Very difficult, thing to do.
That would
But
be
what
hard.
she sometimes does meetings from his place, and where she does it, there's this plant hanging in the background, and I'm like, is that a real plant? And she goes, no, Trevor couldn't keep a real plant alive. He just bought this plant thinking that he was going to decorate his space, but that was where it ended. And so I'm like, well, you've got to bring that plant back. I mean, it's iconic now. I mean, it's just this sad little plastic plant hanging from,
Right.
yeah, sorry. Um,
That's, but you just described what I hear all the time, which is, maybe Trevor's not interested in design, but for someone who wants a great looking space, they do this, and I've done it. It's human nature. You're kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this, and you go out and you get something, and then you get home and you're like, well, wait, now what? And where does it go? What goes with it? I wanted to give people a way to use checks and balances to make sure that when they are buying things, they're kind of they're in the right lane. They know where they're going so
mhm.
that they can gather it and that it's not stressful and it's not annoying to them. It should be a fun process.
Well, the what you said about writing the book, where you had, as a professional designer, I could go this way, I could go that way, but you needed one for the book. I equate that to what I tell people about profit first. Is kind of like a chef. Like chefs don't necessarily use recipes, right? But that's
Right.
because they've used the recipes and then now they understand what they can change and what the change does. And so it's like if you're going to do profit first, or if you're going to do design, follow the recipe until at least you have some understanding of what those elements do.
Such a good comparison. So accurate for designing a room, designing a home, and of course, starting a business.
Yes. So let's talk about that for a minute. How tell us about your interior design business. How did you get into that?
Well, it wasn't a choice. I was
Ah,
forced into it. No,
okay.
that's not entirely true, but
Non-consensual
partially
interior
true.
design. I love that.
Non-consensual interior. It felt that way. No, this is what happened is I wanted to be an actress. I moved to New York and I did not love the lifestyle of being a artist. So I got into sales. I did pharmaceutical sales, and that was a really great career path for someone. I mean,
Yes.
has a nice, I had expenses, I had budget and car and all these things. But I really didn't like that. I didn't like selling something that wasn't mine, and I didn't love it. So, despite the fact that I had this great setup, I felt like I wanted to do something else. We moved outside of Philadelphia, and I had this house that I had to decorate, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I went back to design school or I went back to school. I had already been to school. I went back to school to study design and I fell in love with it. I thought, I wonder if I could make money doing this.
Mm,
I
yes.
know that's a question you sometimes address. So I thought, I wonder if I could actually make money doing this. Now, remember, I'm starting from a pretty good salary, so it was not easy to
No.
just say, oh, let's just give that all up and then I will start doing this and see if I can make
Yeah,
money.
go from making money to spending money. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah. And with no prospects. So but this is the interesting part is I just felt I had to.
hmm.
I was doing this job that I didn't love. I really had a great setup and I still wasn't happy. And I felt that I really had no other choice. So I had reluctant support from my husband. He supported me, but obviously he
Well,
wasn't thrilled about it. Uh,
my wife cried when I told her that we were starting a business. So you're ahead of the game if he was supportive.
so she gets it.
Yeah,
She gets it,
yeah,
right? So I went, I started from square one. I started by working for someone else, and I did that for about a year. And then I was like, I really want to do this. So I went
yeah.
out on my own. I felt like I really had to kind of claw my way to learn all the things and do all the things, but it blossomed pretty quickly. And suddenly I found myself having a lot of clients and not a lot of support staff to
Yes.
get it all done.
This is from an outsider's perspective from interior design, because when I think initially about interior design, I think like at even an architectural level and like very high end, right?
Hmm.
And I think that obviously is a limited market, right? To be able to pay for that. But then I've even seen like furniture stores that offer design services, right?
Hmm.
To help sell their. So there seems to be like you mentioning this gap.
Yes.
I see a lot of people that would want interior design service of some kind, but not at the full blown level. Is
Right.
that accurate?
Absolutely. And really, the process of hiring an interior designer and working with an interior designer is a very intimate one.
Hmm.
You're working on such a regular basis. I know everything about my clients. I know how many pairs of underwear they own. It's like a
Pause,
ridiculous thing.
pause, pause. Why?
Well, if I'm renovating their closet, I have to know how much
you
space we
count
need.
their underwear?
Okay, I'm
Or are you
exaggerating, using hyperbole.
are you taking their word for it? You're not auditing their underwear.
I'm not auditing it, but I'm looking in a drawer.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
I'm
Sorry.
the,
Pause.
the point is it's
Unpause. You're good. Go ahead.
unpause. The point is it's so I know everything about them. I know, whose son drags mud in the house. I know like it's such an intimate relationship and it's one that really you could not replicate on this widespread basis for
Right.
people who you have to work with someone who can afford to pay you for all
Right.
that and they do get a great result. But the cool thing about this is the only person who knows their house better than their interior designer is the person who lives in the house and owns it. So for people reading this book, they know already all the things they need to know. They just don't know how to put them together and make the best design product because how would they? I mean, how often does someone design a space in their life? Maybe 10 times, depending on
Yeah.
how often they move. It's not a skill that you're doing every day. It's impossible for someone who is not a professional to know all of the tricks and the trends and the ways to put things together.
So do you see this maybe evolving into some type of microservice offering where maybe you consult ad hoc, like they send you pictures and I'm just asking, just,
Yeah, no, it's definitely on the radar
you know,
because I have been thinking, what other ways can I provide services? So right now, obviously I have the book, The Living Room
Yes.
Design Formula on Amazon, but I also am producing YouTube videos, um, and trying to get a lot of information out there for people. And then, yes, I would like to maybe set up a cohort and see how it works. I was thinking maybe it's a group of 10 people and we meet via Skype's going away, one of those services.
Skype.
We
Did
meet
you
one of those
just say Skype?
services. I did.
How old are you? You don't look
I'm,
old enough to use the word Skype.
oh, you're so sweet. Tell me
I,
more things like that.
I'm
Tell,
just saying. Although you did work for some pharmaceutical company, so you know.
right. So, yeah, no, I am 42, turning
Okay.
43.
All right.
I'm certainly familiar with Skype, but yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Oh my gosh, that really does date me. So anyway,
It gets
I'm
worse. I promise.
so I hear.
Yeah. Like the
So
jerk.
I'm
I mentioned the
considering,
jerk. I mean, how many in the
right,
audience are even
great
going to
movie.
know what that is? Or even Steve Martin? Like,
Ah,
sorry.
well, if there's anyone listening who has not seen The Jerk or doesn't know Steve Martin, this is a gift.
It is.
This is a gift for you to look up Steve Martin, particularly The Jerk, really any Steve Martin movie. You just opened up a whole world to yourself of humor.
Did
So
you know that he
lucky.
wrote a book of poetry?
I did. I haven't read it.
Cruel Shoes?
I've heard of it.
Yes.
My
Yes.
aunt is a huge Steve Martin fan. She told me about.
Yeah. That poem in itself is actually hilarious.
Yeah.
You need to go read the poem, Cruel Shoes.
I need to get the book
Yes, it's
because we all need a little more humor in our life.
yes. Well, there's there's this is me being politically incorrect. There's another poem in there called "She Had the Jugs." So pick it up, you'll love it.
I love it.
Okay, so you've been in interior design how long?
15 years.
Okay, and you decided to write this book. So 15 years, you've seen some shit, and
That's for sure.
yeah, and like you have the chops, and you've experienced enough. What what was the light bulb moment to write the book? Like I'm sure this wasn't just a impulse thing.
Right. People have been asking, how long did you work on it? And the answer is anywhere between 14 years and 1 year. Because I have had this idea. I've started gathering these thoughts early on. Really, it happened quite quickly because I had some clients I was working with that they'd be like, oh, can you help my sister? Can you go to my mother's house? Can you do this? And next thing I knew, I was really quite overwhelmed and I felt like I wasn't able to help anyone really
Mm,
thoroughly
yeah.
because it is, in order to do a really good job, you have to know so much about a person. So that's when I thought, I just wish I could, direct them to
Hmm.
something. Just today, my cousin sent me a text message like, I am renovating and my master bedroom. I'm over my head. And I was like, go to chapter 3 and you'll see the section about this. And that applies to this part of your situation. So, yeah, so I've been working on it for a long time, seriously, for a year. But before that, I had been gathering, I had been putting lists together because there are a lot of checks and balances that I kind of refined over the past 15 years that are really useful to someone who's just a homeowner and wants their space to look great.
Yeah. So the there's a time and a financial commitment to writing a book. Um, what are your expectations around that? Like you've already invested the time, but you've got to spend time marketing it as well.
Right.
What were your expectations when you decided to write the book, and have they changed?
That's such a good question.
I know I ask only
Because
good
I think
questions.
you do. I think there are a lot of people out there who either have written a book or want to write a book. And I liken it to having a baby because at first you're like so excited. This is going to be great. And yes, I will do all those things. I can't wait to market my book. That is going to be so much fun. And then you're pregnant and you're like, oh, this is kind of the pits. Like as I'm writing the book, I'm like, oh, it's up and down. I'm so excited. This is going great. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Then the editor gets their hands on. You're like, oh, there are only 4,357 edits. Great. Um,
The editing
so you
process
know.
is brutal.
It's brutal. And then you go through cover design, you're so excited to see, and then you're like, oh, but I want this. And so, anyway, the reason I answer that way is because, yes, I went into this with open eyes, knowing it's not just about putting the book out there, it's about getting it out there and letting people know about it. And that's really what my goal is now. But definitely, I went in thinking, oh, yeah, this will be so much fun, and now I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I need to stay focused on the marketing part. Like, I kind of almost have taken a break in a way that I'm just letting things go for a little bit and and refocusing my efforts.
You said having a baby. I've never had one, so I can't compare that. I would say it's more like raising a child. Like
Right.
it is uh, in the truest sense some of the best in the world, at best in your
Hmm.
life, and the worst in your life. Um,
Right.
as I tell all of the new parents, children ruin your life, and that's true because your old
In the
life
best way.
your old life is done.
It's gone.
It's gone. It
Gone.
doesn't exist anymore. But I say that tongue in cheek.
I
They don't.
agree completely.
Yeah.
And I love my life with kids.
Hmm.
But you're right. That other person is gone.
Yeah. I remember when we had our first child. It was the weekend. My wife was somewhere, and I decided that I needed to run up to the office. Uh, and I was in the car before I realized that my daughter was asleep in her crib, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't go anywhere." Yeah, yeah,
I remember that feeling, as especially when you're a new mother and you're like, you wake up and for maybe a few minutes, if the baby, let's say you're in the hospital and the baby's in the nursery, and then you're like, oh, wait, I'm a mom?
yeah,
I have a
yeah,
child?
yeah.
What?
I
That doesn't
remember
seem right.
we get discharged from the hospital, and they're helping us put the car seat in, and we'd bought the wrong car seat, and so it was way too big, and we're
Right.
putting this tiny human in here, and we get in the car, and we just had this overwhelming feeling of like, now what? Like, wait a second,
Yeah.
aren't you going to give us some instructions? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like, are you really just going to let me take this
Yeah,
baby
yeah.
and
Like
just
I,
go?
I don't know what I'm doing.
And really, writing a book, in so many ways, it's the same. The writing was like pregnancy for me. It's like, you're excited, you feel great. You're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? How am I going to get to the end of this? And then now you're right. It's like having this child. Like, really, people are like, that's so exciting. I'm like, it's really weird. It's really weird. But occasionally I'll get a message from someone who I don't know, because everyone they're like, the book is great.
Yes,
Oh, it's
yes.
awesome. And I'm like, well, you probably didn't read it, and that's okay. Um, and
My
like, you
wife
just
still
love me.
hasn't read mine, so
Right. Right. And that's fine. But you just love me. So you're going to say that.
yes.
And occasionally I'll get a message from someone who either I don't know, or it's someone that doesn't have to tell me this,
Hmm.
right? Like, it was one of my friends' mothers gave this to her daughter. So my friend's sister, but it came through the mother, is the point. And she is not someone that I have her cell phone number, but I know who she is. And she texted me and told me how great it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was worth it. Like, it really is helping people. And, we don't feel that way that much with our kids. Just kidding. We do. My kids are great. I love them. No, but
They
there are
are
a lot of
listening.
moments where you're like, did I do this right? Are they good people? And then they do things and you're like, oh, they are good people. This was worth
Yeah.
it.
I had a similar moment when somebody reached out to me, from that I didn't know that had read the book. I put my actual email in the book, and a phone number, And
Oh, wow.
I not my cell phone number. It was a
Okay.
separate number. So, but I still get
Right.
texts and stuff. And
That's
one
great.
one person reached out, and I ended up talking to him. And there's a um, chapter in the book. It's actually the last chapter of the book. It's called the Ham chapter, and he was listening it on audio, and his daughter was listening in the car, and she said, "What does ham mean?" And he's like, I don't know if this is age appropriate, share, but I'm going to go ahead. And he said, well, it stands for hard as a motherfucker. And she was going to softball practice, and she's like, oh, I love that. I'm going to go ham. I'm like, I'm shaping the minds of America's
Yes.
youth. Thank you.
You're leaving your mark.
Yes.
That is
not necessarily a good one, but maybe a skid
same thing
mark.
we do with our kids. I
Yeah.
mean, I said a word the other day that I was like, oh, people don't say that anymore. I probably shouldn't say that in front of my children.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
It was a slip.
back to the interior design business. What
Yes.
15 years you've seen some shit, as I said. What are
Yeah.
some of the biggest challenges looking back that you had to overcome in starting a business?
Really good question.
We've
The
already
biggest
stipulated
challenge.
that I only ask good questions, so
This
you
is
don't have
true.
to
This is
you don't have
true.
to say that
So,
anymore.
but that one is better.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a
All
higher
right.
level good question.
Okay. All
On
right.
a good question scale, it's even higher than others.
Okay.
And it buys me time to think about all the challenges
What was the first
that
one that came to mind?
I faced. The first one that came to mind was contractors, working with contractors.
Mm.
I don't want to scare people off because we already know that it's challenging to work with contractors. Um, but really with that, I would say also is kind of scaling the business. And I don't just mean selling more to more people. In design, you start out, most people do at least, I started out on smaller projects, going in, working with someone by the hour, helping them rearrange a living room or a bedroom. And then you start working with these people, they like you have the trust, and then they want to renovate, and then we're moving walls, and then we're building additions, and then we're building houses. So the big hiccup for me was always figuring out how to work with these other contractors in a way that benefited the client, but still gave us a really good product. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something probably still working through.
Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with interior design, it's a strange hybrid. It can be a strange
Mhm.
hybrid business model because part of it is service, and then part of it is you know essentially construction management, and those are two very different things. And two different ways to make money, and it can be
Right.
it can be hard to put those two together.
Absolutely. And I got into it thinking, okay, I had to try different business models. So first, I'm just going to charge a flat fee per room. Well,
That
first
won't
project,
work.
and I couldn't do that because even the most wonderful people who would never want to take advantage of you take so much
You should
advantage
have
of your
asked
time.
me. You should have asked me
I
beforehand.
should have.
I
Where
could have
were
told you
you 15 years
that
ago?
was a bad idea.
What so then I thought I'll only charge by the hour. I'll just have an hourly rate, which is still essentially what I do. But as I learned more and got more into the industry, I realized a lot of this business is having access to
Mm-hmm.
products that people can't just order online. Now, that's
Mm-hmm.
changed quite a bit even since I started. But as a designer, you really need to be a wholesaler.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that comes with a whole bunch of challenges because now you need a receiver. You need to have someone who's going to deliver the product for you, and you're not protected by a big company who will take back your return if it doesn't
Right.
fit or if things come up.
Right.
So that was a whole layer of business I had to unveil. And then getting into the construction, contractors, at least in my area, probably most people listening can relate. It's a very expensive thing. So I wasn't looking to make money on the construction. I didn't want to. It was already so expensive. But you have to be compensated.
Yes.
So then I'm charging by the hour, and I had to try different models. Like at first, a contractor would say, "Well, hey, I'll give you like 10% of the thing." Well, I hated that feeling, hated that, even though a lot of designers operate that way. So what I'm trying to say is every business is different. And
Hmm.
for creatives, a lot of time we're looking at these different facets. And I don't think anyone could have told me anything without me trying it that
Mm.
I would have really
Yeah.
listened to unless
Yeah.
I went through it because, you're bright eyed and bushy tailed. You're like, I'm going to make it work. I can do it. And then you're like, oh, actually, there's a reason why people do it that way.
Yes.
So,
I saw your actor's chops there. I mean, you
oh,
nailed it. Um, I, I'm curious. So, like, I'm thinking about contractors, and then I'm thinking about architects and the way they bill, and like architects typically have a percentage of the contract. They're 1 or 2%. Have you ever tried to do that on the whole thing? Like, so they're building or they're renovating, and you're so like, well, just like you're paying the architect 1%, you're going to pay me 1% or 0.5%. Have you ever tried that?
right. I haven't. And I think it's interesting for an interior designer to try. I think that for the way my business has come up, I'm not doing a lot of like whole house builds,
Yeah,
right? So if you're doing a whole house build, that makes a lot of sense.
or even a
Um,
full renovation. I mean, have you
a
tried
full
it that way?
renovation. Here's the other challenge um, with design specifically, and maybe architects also face this, but I think less so. What I do is like putting together a puzzle. So we get those first pieces in, but I have no idea what the center of that puzzle looks like in the beginning.
You don't have a
So
picture.
I
You don't have the
I
picture on the box,
I have a I have like I saw the picture a few weeks ago.
but
So
you
it's
don't
in
have
my
it in front of.
head,
Okay.
but I'm not looking at that specific picture. I have an idea. I know it's going to look something like this, but what I'm doing is constantly changing every week that I'm meeting with the client. So, while I can put out a budget, it's really going to fluctuate. People have ideas about how much a sofa should cost, and then they have ideas about how much a rug should cost. And the person who thinks that it's okay to spend a lot on a sofa may not necessarily spend a lot on a rug, or they might think they're going to spend a lot on these things and then come to me and say, "Oh, well, look, I just found this one at Pottery Barn." So, and I want to be fine with that. I don't want to have to sell a certain amount of product,
Yeah.
which is why I maintain an hourly rate. No matter what, if I buy something for someone, they get a big chunk of my discount. I have to keep some to manage my business costs. But at the end of the day, I've gone by hour. And that was at the advice, actually. See, I do listen to some advice. That was at the advice of some industry professionals kind of early on. They saw this shift happening in design. Formerly, designers lived only on selling stuff. But now with the internet, you can
Right.
really kind of get anything.
Yeah.
So that's how I came to this conclusion. But I think it's interesting. I've been doing less and less of the full projects. I just have a handful of clients I've been working with for most of them 10 years or more, and
Nice.
that's who I stay with. And I haven't really taken on a new job since COVID.
Yeah, pricing is one of those things that fascinates me because it's very nebulous for most things. And there's so many different variables, and trying to figure out like how can the business owner extract the most value that the customer or client is willing to pay. And
Hmm.
it's not, if you're selling a product, it's easier. But even that's not easy. I use the example in the book about water, and how, anybody that says that, oh well, my business is just a commodity, I can't change my pricing. I use water as an example because you go through getting water out of the tap, what that actually costs versus bottled water from Sam's to Evian.
Right.
I mean, like, no, their pricing is not it is an art. It is not. There is science behind it, but
Hmm.
it is an art for sure. Have you heard of the Pearl Collective?
It sounds familiar, but I can't place what it is.
And I apologize. I don't remember her name. I interviewed her for the book. She's out of Colorado, but she runs a collective of interior designers for like the
Oh,
business
cool.
aspects of it. Um, yeah. So, all right.
Really
So,
smart.
yeah.
And that's a great avenue for someone who wants to build a design business. Is, I don't necessarily recommend doing what I did, which was just kind of going it alone. And I tried, to be honest, I tried to find designers I could work for. And I did work in like kind of a showroom situation to learn
Hmm.
the business. But what I really wanted to was to work under, I wanted to work under another designer's umbrella. I wanted to have my own clients, but kind of use their resources and give them a portion of what I made. And I couldn't find that. But what I did was with my own business, I started doing that for other people. So
Hmm.
I've had a number of designers who have worked under me. And I still work with one where she uses me as her resource and I take a portion of everything she bills.
Is
And
there
that's worked out really beautifully.
is there any branding where like she's not acting in your name, or she is?
She is. She
Okay.
is. So she is,
So you,
working under the Barrickman Design Group umbrella. And she loves that because, unlike me, where a client's like, can you do this? Or what about this? She can go, oh, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask.
yeah.
I'm going to have to ask her, which she may or may not actually have to ask me. But, it gives you sometimes some protection. Whereas obviously people I work with know I make the final say.
Yeah, and I think that's not a bad business model for any creative business, where you have some very talented people. Um, they don't necessarily want to work for somebody else. They want to be self-employed and have that flexibility, but they don't really want to build a business.
Hmm.
And the distinction between that is a business functions without the owner's involvement. And it took me, 27 years to build that. Shouldn't have, but it did. Like, if I don't show up, the wheels keep moving.
Right.
In all aspects, like that can't just be the work. It's got to be all the marketing and the finances. It's got it. You got to have all of those bases covered. But creating a business is hard, and I made it harder. But
We all do.
yeah,
I definitely made it harder than it
but
needed to be.
it's distinct from I want to be a solopreneur. I want to be a self-employed, whatever you want to call that,
Hmm.
and that's not denigrating those people that choose that path. But I think it's important to know upfront what you want, because
Hmm.
if you want to build a business, understand it's going to take more time, more money, more blood, sweat, and tears, but it's distinct. It has value in and of itself beyond you actually showing up and punching the clock.
Right. And I would say that if you have a burning desire to build a business, absolutely go for it. But if you don't have a burning desire to build a business, there's no reason to find. I know there are so many great opportunities, so many more than when I started 15 years ago, where you can be that solopreneur and
Yeah.
you can be creative and profitable, but you don't have to be running a big business.
No.
So, I think that's such great advice that you're giving is know what you're getting into and decide, do you want to be the person who runs a business? If you do, go for it. But if you're not sure, then find your other opportunities.
Yeah, and I have said this many times. The business reached a point where it was limited by me. Like, every business reaches the potential,
Right.
or is gonna stall out at the level of the owner. And for me, making the decision to grow myself to be able to grow the business beyond where it was, which actually initially meant shrinking it, but that's a different story.
Mhm.
But I knew that I had to step backwards before I could go further forwards. That was harder than starting the business. And
Interesting. Yeah.
and you know, I often kind of wonder maybe I shouldn't have done that journey. Like I I'm glad for the opportunity, and I'm glad for where I
Right.
ended up. But it was fucking hard, and that's yeah, kind of like you were talking about with the book. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the euphoria of something new, and that's all fun and games, but
Right.
then you got to go do the
Of
work.
course, I will do that. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Famous last
then
words.
reality hits you. But it's still good. It doesn't mean that you lose that
No.
drive. It just, there is a point of, you get tired. And I've recently been just trying to be like, you know what? That's okay. I'm not on, I don't need to be breaking whatever goal every day. It's okay to have a week where I'm kind of taking a back seat, and that makes me better when I get back to it.
Well, if you haven't listened to the episode with Melinda Jackson, she's PR
Oh,
professional.
I haven't listened to that one.
Go back and listen to that. She's younger than you and I, but she's already figured that out. She's like, I'm not going to let other people define my success. Like I'm not.
Love that.
Yeah, and it's not nefarious. It's not like people are trying to manipulate you with their
Right.
expectations, but it's real easy to get caught up into doing something for somebody else, or because you think that
Hmm.
you have to, right?
And
Um,
especially when you have clients.
yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I'm going to give you a resource, and I'll connect you afterwards.
please do.
Joshua Schwartz with PubVindo is an agency that exclusively works with authors and promoting their
Awesome.
books. And I've used him and been pleased with the results. So shout out
Joshua
to
Schwartz and Melinda Jackson.
what?
She
Yes,
was on the show.
Josh didn't have an interview. I don't think.
I know.
I don't
I
think I
just
interviewed him.
am
Yeah.
writing these things down
Yes. Okay. How do
for
we
everyone out
find?
there listening.
How
Sorry
do
for the delay.
how do we find your book? I mean, Amazon, yeah, but do you have a website? Do you where do you want to send
Yes.
this?
Yes. Well, two things. First of all, I have a website. If you go to www.livingroom, I'm sorry, .lrdesignformula.com. So LR for living room. www. Do I even need to say that? No.
No, we're going to put the links
LRdesignformula.com.
in the show notes. So
So that will be there. But also, one of the resources that's I'm providing to listeners is a free. It's really a taste of the book. It's how to create a gallery wall in your home. So it's an instant PDF that you can download if you go to
mm,
www.gallerywalltips.com. Gallerywalltips.com. You can download this PDF instantly, and that will give you all the instructions to create a beautiful gallery wall. We all kind of have that lonely wall somewhere in our home that just needs some love. And a gallery wall is something that a designer usually will put together to showcase. It can be photos, it can be artwork, it can be a number of things. But I give you all the tips, frame sizes, frame recommendations, all those things based on your measurements are in this gallerywalltips.com. And also, I am on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok at Barrickman Design. And my last name is quite unfortunately spelled with many letters, which is
that was
B
hard
A
as a
R R.
kindergartner. Well, no, you're married,
Well,
so you didn't have that
I'm married,
name.
so actually, my maiden name was probably worse. Um, but still, why didn't I marry someone with last name of like Ford or Smith
Yeah,
or
because you
But
didn't love
that
them.
handle may not have been available then. So
Yeah.
Barrickman Design, Barrickman Design.
Well, I don't have that problem. My daughter, I will also recommend her episode. I interviewed her, Mackenzie Brim. She's a figurative oil painter. And
Mm.
so I have a ton of her stuff in my house. And so I don't have any blank walls.
You don't have any blank walls.
No, but I will
But
download the PDF to make sure that they are displayed appropriately.
well, that's the thing, is it will give you the framework for how to really honor her artwork. Because, and I'm sure your home is lovely. I'm not making a statement about it, but I notice sometimes people kind of just like splatter art all around. I would like to honor her artwork. She should have a gorgeous collection all on one wall. It makes a dramatic design effect, and it's great to really bring all the colors and depth of her work into one area. So download it.
I will download it, and thank you for the resources.
Sure.
Listeners, will have all of those links in our show notes. If you like what you heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you don't like what you heard, shoot us a message. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll replace Amy. Until then,
Knew that was coming.
ta-ta for now.